Welcome to the Most High Show, a show about recovery, spirituality, and the 12 steps. Produced, hosted, and posted by people in recovery who've been given strength and hope and want to share it with you. If you or someone you love is suffering, we want you to know you are not alone. This is the Most High Show. Hey, what's up? This is Christian with the Most High Show, and today I'm sitting with Doug, and we're going to be talking about step 9 of the 12 steps. These steps that people use to get freedom over substance, over alcohol, over a lot of different things. These steps are applicable to life change and transformation. And we're today talking about step 9. And what's step 9 again?
You're making
hold the mic up here.
Yeah, you're making amends to made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. After the 8th step, you're basically making a list.
Yeah.
The concept is that a big part of addictions it's a shame-based disease, and that you almost inevitably have caused some pain or suffering or harm to other people. It's very important for you to face that in order to grow and move on, spiritually and otherwise.
So this is a part of that, cleaning up that wreckage, so that you can kind of move forward with a clear conscience as much as possible.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, the purpose of why we talk about these steps is because there's so many people who are still suffering, are still out there. And so we use social media as a platform. We use YouTube. We use the podcast as a platform to get the message out, to let people know that there are those of us who do recover, who make it through. It's not easy. It's hard. We're not trying to sugarcoat anything. And so before we get too deep, what I'd like for you to do is just tell us kind of like an overview of your story and kind of the journey that's brought you here tonight.
Okay. We'll give the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
I've had battles with addiction since I was 18, and had various periods of sobriety. At the longest, previous to my current time sober, I'm coming up on 14 years.
Okay.
I had just shy of 5 years.
Make sure you pull the mic up. All
right. Anyway, I had just short of 5 years leading up to that. I had gotten sober, but I wasn't really 100% committed to the program and to working the steps. Okay. Working a spiritual program. I was kind of just going through the motions and going to meetings, and ultimately that caught up with me. And I relapsed. I was, when I relapsed, I was probably 25, 26, 25.
Mm-hmm. And how many years sober were you at that point?
At that point, I was just shy of 5 years. So it was like 4 years and 9 months.
Okay. All right.
And so, I relapsed. All the things that they say are going to happen. Like, it was very quick. It got a hold of me. Despite the years sober, drugs and alcohol had a grip on me like quick, very quickly. I'll fast forward through the what the relapse was. I mean, it was, where previously I was more involved with drugs. It was mostly alcohol, but I was blacking out a lot.
Okay.
Getting into fights, doing stuff that's not something that I do,
Right.
Just total departure from my normal self, sober self. But ultimately it culminated in me getting into a car accident. I'd been out with my girlfriend at a party, drinking, and I was blacked out. I was completely inebriated. Most of what I know about that night comes from police reports and from people that were around me that night, what they remember about it. But the gist of it is I left this party, and I had been drinking. I got into a fight with my girlfriend, and I got into a car accident. I don't remember anything about it. I was on the highway. I guess I was headed home, but someone was killed. I was rubbed up against this car. I don't really know exactly, the details of it, but it resulted in, I can tell you what the police report says, but it ultimately, tragically, a young woman was killed. And that resulted in me obviously getting arrested, and a journey through the Arizona criminal justice system. So obviously after, approximately 2 years of relapsing, I got sober in jail and then in prison. And so obviously, I had tremendous shame and self-loathing, disgust with myself. It was very difficult, getting through the adjudication process. And getting ultimately sentenced. How
long did you get
so
sentenced?
ultimately I got sentenced to 13 years. Of that, I ended up doing 11 and a half years, or 11 years and 3 months to be exact. But I had to find peace. We're talking about the 9 step. I had to find peace with what I had done. Otherwise, there was just no way that I was going to be able to live in my own skin. And so, I would describe, the typical, or the normal path of sobriety, through the various 12-step programs, wasn't really available where I ended up in prison.
Okay.
So I had to, I had experience working the steps, which is essentially just a path to spiritual living. It's just a step-by-step guide to finding spirituality and a connection with whatever your higher power is, whatever your concept of that is. The normal path of that wasn't like I didn't have support groups. They had meetings there, but they were, like we were talking about, they were kind of set up within the institution as like a punishment and not, nobody there was really trying to stay sober.
Right.
So
you're in these meetings with a bunch of prisoners who are kind of forced to be there so they can get their commissary back or their visitations back.
Telephone calls, exactly.
They're just perpetrating. They're just sitting in there fronting, but there really is no. Most people weren't desiring to gain lasting
Not at
recovery.
all. No, in fact, they were.
But what about you? Were you in there feeling like I need to get this worked out?
Yeah, absolutely. I was very committed to staying sober. I had like a kind of an awakening that it was like I was either going to die in this place or I was going to find a way to live. And for a lot of reasons, partly because of my family, I was committed to doing whatever it took to stay sober. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the criminal justice system, especially the prisons, they're absolutely flooded with drugs. There's just, a lot of people are in there that's what they get arrested for smuggling drugs, so it doesn't stop. The profit margins just increase.
Right.
People are dropping dead from overdoses left and right.
Yeah.
All the movies you see and all the, prison scenes, most of the people that die that were coming out of the places I were dying from overdoses or suicides.
Wow.
So, in a nutshell, I had to find a way to do service. What I know of the program is, the essence of it is addiction is the epitome of selfishness and self-absorbed, self-seeking.
Yeah. And
the solution is selflessness, and that's service with other people.
Yeah.
So, in my situation, the 9 step, making direct amends to people that you've harmed. There was obviously other people that had harmed, had to make amends to family members, on a number of different things. Primarily my relapse, because I've been sober, and I took them on this roller coaster again.
Right. So family, loved ones had kind of experienced this, addicted you, and then here's 5 years of this sober you, this you, the actual you.
Right.
And then they have to experience it kind of all again.
All over again. Not to mention that addiction had killed my brother probably about 10 years previous to that. So it was very consequential to my family, and I was not all right with that. So I was going to do this thing one way or the other. I was completely determined. I didn't know how to do it. I was in a very ugly, hostile environment.
Yeah.
People were not very receptive to anything that looked like,
vulnerability,
or spirituality,
talking
or
about your feelings.
any of those things. You just don't do those things
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that environment.
Spiders over there with a tattoo on his forehead.
Right, so
yeah.
it can be a dangerous place. I mean, and you've got to kind of project this. You do not want to look, soft or whatever, because people get victim. I mean, that does happen. I mean, it's maybe kind of skewed and
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood, but it is, it can be a dangerous place. So, I was blessed in that I got an opportunity to work in the GED school, tutoring other people, help them get their GEDs.
Okay.
And so this was like kind of my salvation in there, because there's just a lot of hopelessness and despair. But in doing that, so I wasn't able to carry the message of, any particular program in terms of, sharing the message of, the 12 steps and staying sober and how to do that.
Right.
Not directly. That wasn't really an option. You would probably get hurt if you approach somebody.
Yeah.
in that way. So I started helping people, in a GED school, and it was like, it like clicked. It was like a moment of clarity. It was like the burning bush for me. It was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I had a sense of peace. I mean, it was pretty profound when it happened. It was like I was all of a sudden okay in my own skin, and it was just a taste of it. Obviously, I would, I go back and struggle with different, it's very easy to get depressed. It would almost be abnormal for you to not suffer with depression, regardless of what the circumstances were that got you in that, because there's just a lot of heavy, hard stuff. Yeah. Not to mention the lack of creature comforts and all the normal things, women, normal food,
right?
Intelligent conversation. I mean, it can be a...
You didn't have any of that.
No. So it can be an uncomfortable place, but in that I looked at it as an opportunity, because it kind of forced me to dig in and to tackle some of the things that were going on with me, into my own spiritual journey, and to get into a lot of introspect. I got heavy into education. I started studying psychology and started working on.
But you're doing most of this is like on your own, like isolated, right?
I mean,
it's not like you have like a therapist walking you through this.
No. I mean, I was corresponding. I have some awesome family. I have some family members that are decade sober, and
So you're writing letters to them, or they're
right. So I'm corresponding with them. So I had an awesome support group from afar. Yeah. Granted, they don't live in Arizona. They're here. Mm-hmm. Essentially, no. I was doing that stuff. So I got some really incredible advice from people, but I was pretty much on my own in terms of doing it. I mean, in God, I hit my knees probably 6 times a day. Because there was just times that there's just no way you're going to do this on your own. I mean, it's just you start the enormity of it that you're facing. It can be overwhelming. But to stay the course, I did. I just stuck with it. I knew as long as I continued to do that. I mean, also I had this tremendous shame in having taken someone's life. The way that I came to terms with that is that I had to hold myself to a higher standard, and this goes directly to the 9th step, into making, this is what we call living amends. I couldn't make amends to the life that I took directly,
right?
But I would pay it indirectly by holding myself to a higher standard and living my life and holding myself to the highest level. I was hard on myself to go above and beyond, to be of service to other people, to be honest, to try and be selfless, to try and be generous, to try and be gracious, and keep an attitude of gratitude. And the truth was, and it wasn't that difficult to maintain gratitude, and everything else froze from that, because I knew that there'd been so many incidents that I cheated death.
Right.
So truly, prison was a gift.
Wow.
I mean, I had my 9 lives plus another 10. Overdoses, car accidents. I had to say, well, why am I? To some extent, there was survival guilt, and I had to work through that. And it was like, well, it's got to be for a reason.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was quite clear what I was supposed to be doing, and that was like, carrying the message. And so the experience, and to me, my entire program and staying sober is carrying the message. And my experience with that, I'm never going to be the best public speaker, but I can reach a certain individual that a lot of other people are going to have a hard time doing.
Yeah.
Because I've been there. I've crawled through it.
Yeah. So do you? Okay. So you go through this. You do your time, and then you get your release day. So are there family members now that once you get out that you can now make an amends to, and what were where you can share? What was that like?
Or so
do you feel like once you got out, you had kind of worked that out?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the pay, right? I've already kind of covered all of that because, I was getting visits, and I was, corresponding. I wrote a lot of letters.
Yeah.
Wrote a lot of letters because, honestly, that was my therapist. Very cathartic, just putting stuff down on paper, like getting out of yourself because, like you said, especially the first 4 years, you're essentially locked in a cell all day.
Yeah.
I would get out to go to work to do the school thing for a couple of hours, but I mean, you spend a lot of time, locked in a 6x9 with another guy, and you're not necessarily, feeling the love. You're not necessarily liking each other, talking to each other. You're,
right.
You're just,
yeah.
You're cellies,
Yeah.
It is what it is. But so I had done a lot of that through the mail, and they would come out. I mean, I'm blessed. They would come out at least twice a year,
Wow.
to Arizona to visit me,
trip.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least Arizona's a scenic place. There was other stuff. They could hit some tourist sites.
Yeah.
The Grand Canyon,
We're gonna go
different
see
monuments,
Grand Canyon while we're out there. We're gonna go see your cousin Doug.
Yeah. So I was able to do a lot of that, but again, to me, the amends that I paid to my parents and the people that were so let down and disappointed was a living amends. There was nothing that I could say. It was the behavior that I was demonstrating. They could see it in my actions. They could see how I had changed and how I was committed to helping other people.
Yeah.
My parents are very strong faith, are very involved with church, and that in itself, seeing me do that and not, just knowing it is true, you know? And so the 9 step going forward, when I got released, we started a nonprofit. We actually have a halfway house. It's like a sober living facility for people coming out of jails and prisons.
Nice. All right.
Because I mean, this is me paying for it, continuing to, living amends.
That really resonates with me, the living amends, because when I went to rehab, and when I went to rehab, I have a wife and 3 kids. And so I was freaking out in rehab. I wanted to just leave, because I wanted to hurry up and go fix this.
Right.
It was like all that guilt and shame was setting on me, and I wanted to go fix it, but it wasn't going to work like that.
Right.
And so the only way I could really make an amends, especially like when I look at my kids, is like, it was like through their developmental years, I was there, but I was very not there. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, absolutely.
So it's like, how do you come back to that and go, okay, here, let me unscrew up your life. Now I'm going to reverse time. I can't do that.
No,
so all I can start to do is be a better dad, be a better husband, be of service in the community, and live those amends. I think that was a lot of my amends were living amends. There were a few people that I had to. And they would come up like a year later, 2 years into it. I would go, oh, I should probably call that person.
Right.
And so I would call, hey, I realized I was a dick, and I'm paraphrasing. And what can I do to make that better?
Right.
And most people would say, it's all good. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Thank you for calling. How you doing? Right. We would just catch up. But there were a couple people that actually did give me the information.
So that's exactly right. So, to me, and this is just me. I'm not a representative of any particular program or organization. To me, the 9 step, as it's phrased within various programs, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them others. It's just opening the door. to taking responsibility for your actions. Because the truth is, most of us in our addictions, whether it's, drug or alcohol or whatever, or sex or gambling or any of those things, that's part of the damage done, is all the lies and the deception and the manipulation and all of that stuff. So your words are kind of hollow. So, so some people are kind of like, some people are insulted depending on what it is.
Yeah. Oh, you're not going
to get warm embraces and let's, sit down and sing Kumbaya. I mean, that's not how it goes. The point is that you're facing your fears. For me, that's what the 9 step is. The real stuff comes, real recovery is when you're living it, and then they see it, and then there may actually be some reconciliation and some forgiveness, and there may not. You may have burned some bridges, but that whole process is becoming a true man or woman, and learning how to live peacefully in your own skin. Yeah, because kind of the thing that we all live with, I think, most addicts or alcoholics, is your mind and your heart are kind of in conflict. And bringing those things into alignment. You have to face your past. The idea is that you face it down, and then once you've addressed all of these things, you can move forward. You can start to grow and go into a new direction. So,
and it's interesting that it's at 9, right? There's some steps that gets you to that point, because this is not easy.
No, it's very difficult, and you've already having obviously the first step and the third step are huge, and then you're doing a 4th step, you're taking inventory, and then you're getting right, you're sharing that with someone and to God, and then you're the process of and then asking God or your higher power to relieve you of this and to move forward. But it's it's also, if you look at the wording, it's not saying that it's just gonna poof and be gone. It's like it's a process, that you're ready to do it. And then then the 9th step comes, and I mean, different people, different steps will be more difficult. I would say, to me, all of the steps truly were to get to the 12th step, which is helping people, because you can't give something away that you don't have, so you've got to work through that stuff. You have to have started making some huge personal growth before you can have anything to say to anybody else that's kind of embarking on the same journey. But that's what it's at for me, because for me, like the first step was, I mean, it was a given. I'm laying in a prison cell. I mean, I'd killed someone. I'm, physically addicted. I mean, my life was in shambles. There's no denying that I'm completely powerless over drugs and alcohol. And, the 3rd step, turning your life over to, the care of God, is understood. I mean, that's a huge thing. That's an ongoing thing that, I mean, all humans, regardless of your faith, are going to struggle with that at times to some extent. Because you're getting into my will or God's will. Is this my will? That's part of the program, is teaching you to constantly evaluate your motives, and given different situations, to make sure that you're to always be trying to be in God's will and not your will. Because I mean, that is the human.
And I think like facing your past in whatever way that ends up working out, is so key to growing in spiritually. I think for me personally, like when I first, so I was addicted growing up as a kid. I got into drugs and alcohol really early on, and then I had a spiritual experience when I met Jesus at this big event, and I just stopped using. I mean, it was a big, huge spiritual experience. But what I didn't do is I didn't kind of do these. I didn't go through the steps. I didn't kind of evaluate my thoughts, my behavior. I didn't clean up any wreckage from my past.
Right.
And I just kind of was like, all right, let's do this. And it was about 3-4 years almost that I started saying, oh, I can drink. There's nothing wrong with drinking. It's legal. I'm fine.
Well, and you're around other people that are living spiritual lives, and they can do that.
And they can drink.
So that's the trap.
Yeah, and so I start drinking, and it's not even a year later, I'm doing dope again. And then that's 10 years that takes me off, Yeah. And so I think there are those people who do kind of have a spiritual experience, and they ride off into the sunset, and God bless them. But for most of us, You know, you can't solve a problem or address a problem by continuing to not deny it. You have to acknowledge it. And then this 9th step is so important because you it's kind of like the seal on it, right? Like all right, you've acknowledged you've done these things. You've acknowledged you have these character defects. Now you're going to face the wreckage that you've done.
Right.
And that's like through that valley you can get
right and on multiple levels, because for one thing, I mean, forget resentments and shame about doing something specific. In a more general sense, you were facing your fears. And at its core, alcoholism addiction, there is a huge fear component. You call it anxiety, you call it this, you call it that. You're scared of all these things, and this is putting you right there where you got to face it. First, you got to put it on paper in 4th step. That's like, oh my God, I got to put all this stuff that I did, all my dirt right here. You know what I mean? And I got to give it to God. I got to talk to somebody else about it. Are you kidding me? That's a huge step, but almost without explaining. It's not necessarily overnight, but you learn that the fears that are worked up in your head, once you face them, they're not nearly as insurmountable as you thought they were.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they just go away with one, with going through a step, but that's a very important thing. And the same thing with the 9th step, you're facing your fears, and then you come to realize that a lot of them are like, you start to see the sickness, that the disease has to do with it's a way you think. It's not just, it's a spiritual thing, it's a mental thing. It doesn't have anything to do really with the drug or the alcohol. That's not the problem. It's your thinking and your, that's getting you in trouble. Because, you get sober and you remove the drug and that just gets you to the starting, the starting line.
So talk to me about, because you seem very much like somebody who has worked through a lot of that shame, and that's a heavy burden to bear. And shame, is a obstacle for a lot of us. So talk to me about like you working through, it's one thing you forgive someone else, but it's like to forgive yourself, to kind of allow yourself to move forward from that, and the shame that you feel, that it's like you can, there was a guy talking at a Bible study, and he was just, I'm a piece of shit. I'm this, I'm so, and it's like, okay, we got to get through that, because if you keep telling yourself you're a piece of shit, well then you're going to probably treat yourself that way.
Right.
So this idea of shame, like, just tell me, like, how did that process in dealing with shame and getting to a point where it's
I had the benefit of, having been sober before and having working in the program, and I kind of understood the mechanics of it. And I was also started studying psychology, and I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in psychology, and also business. I had a lot of time, so I kept my mind occupied, because but like you hear in the rooms of pretty much all the programs that I've been to, it's an action program. It's not a thinking program. It's a doing program.
Yeah.
So the way through all of this stuff is getting busy doing service, is getting busy working. You can't, there's no way you're gonna, intellectualize or philosophize. You're not gonna get through it just by, or just talking to somebody. All those things are helpful. I'm not, but
at some point, some action has to happen.
The action has to happen. And where I was, in the place that I was, it was very clear what I had to do. I had to get busy trying to help people wherever I could get in there. And help people, and just my nature, it just kind of worked out. I look back at it, the politics of the prisons and stuff, like going through the high custody, the 4-yard, and when I got to lower custody yard, I had enough of a establish yourself enough in the higher yards that I was able to do things and reach out to people, and then I was actually approaching people. And I started working with kind of the inmate hierarchy and helping people that were in trouble, because people get in debt. If you get in debt in prison, it's all bad, And you have different races, and it's very racial, at least out there it is. And so, you have a white guy who owes a Mexican guy or a black guy money. It becomes an issue that, that other race, they're gonna want to put hands, or they're gonna either want to smash him or stab him or whatever. So I would get involved and try to take these guys on, and so I kind of force myself on them, like in sponsorship. So this is not something you would be doing out here in the free world. But
you're in an extreme situation.
Yeah, I was doing what I had to do, and I can tell you I probably sponsored 15 guys, and there's one that stayed sober, but he's got 10 years, and he got out and he grew up on the streets, and now he's running a major treatment center in Arizona. You know, like he got out 5 years before me, and he just moved to Wisconsin actually in the last week to open up a detox unit for them. So he's like the face of this like company. He had like 50 employees. I mean, this guy, I helped him get his GED, and then I find out after we got out, he's like, well, I didn't really pass it. I kind of paid somebody to take the test. Yeah, I spent years. I mean, but he was able to transfer his street smarts and his drive and his hustle into free will and helping people, and his background, similar to mine, except that his background, like I come from a good family. I mean, he grew up rough. He grew up on the streets, literally. And
so you never, I mean, in that action of service to others, you never know how impactful that is.
No, you don't, and that's the thing, is you got to get out of your head and stop thinking about it, because the thing is it seems hopeless. I mean, especially in that environment, it seems hopeless. But I can tell you what I did. Like, I didn't even know what my spiritual beliefs were. I didn't know what I believed in. This day I don't know. There's something that I can tap into. I'll hit my knees. A lot of that is the humility of just hitting my knees, but I didn't know what else to do. I needed to tap into something because it was bigger than me. I couldn't do it on my own. So I hit my knees, and I would continue to, and ask for, you don't pray for things to get better. You don't pray for life to be easy. You pray for the strength to endure the things that you're gonna inevitably encounter. So I prayed for the strength to continue to stay at this, regardless of what I thought about it. And this is pointless. This is hopeless. I would keep, just every day. And so I'm just, how that hit my, affected me working through shame is just, I was just chiseling away at it, there was no, like, all of a sudden I was, like I said, when I started helping people, I would get peace from that, but in terms of, there would still be nights where I would wake up and be like, I'd wake up, you fall asleep and you wake up in the middle of the night and you're looking up at a cell and you're looking through your little thing, you're looking at razor wire and hearing the squawks of radios, and you're just like, how, even years into it, you're like, how did I end up here? You know what I mean? And then it just all comes back and you're like, wow, oh my God, but you stay at it, and stuff gets better. And I guess that's the answer. There is no, magic formula. It's just, perseverance, and the strength or the tenacity to stay with that came from, prayer and a stubborn belief that I would prevail eventually. Right. And I had nothing but time. And that the alternative was very grim. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you're looking at these guys who they don't care. They've embraced that life. And I was never going to do that. Yeah. Like, and people in the meeting, if I'm being honest, I got to a maximum security yard and I saw some of these dudes, and people go to meetings and they're like, I just came to a meeting and I felt like I was home. I still don't feel like I'm home. I come here because this is where, I can be of service. When I hit a maximum security yard, I honestly felt more in common with some of the guys in there, and that scared the shit out of me. Right. It scared the shit out of me. Because they were all that guy in the back of the room that was cutting up in school when we were kids and making fun of the smart kids and picking on people and just being an asshole, I was, a little bit that way, and then, but I wasn't to that extreme. I wasn't okay with some of the stuff they were up to, Right. But their sense of humor, their basic demeanor, and I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this for life. This is not what I'm about. So, I got busy. I was like, looking at those guys, it was a constant reminder that I had to work. And like I said, that shame was a powerful motivator for me to continue to work at trying to be a better person, because I knew the only way I was going to get out of that shame is I was, if I left somebody dead on the side of the highway and I didn't do anything about it, well, then I am a piece of shit. You know what I mean? But if I'm doing everything I can to be a better person, a productive person, and to help my fellow man, then I feel like I'm at least, I think service is our rent for our time here on earth. No. And if there's a secret to life in general, that's what it is. Yeah. No, I've worked with some people who
they've gotten out of some programs, and the programs don't instill that idea of service. And they sit with me, and they're like, you can just tell they're floating. And it's like, yeah, they're sober, they're clean, but the concept of service.
Right, that's what fills that hole that you've been trying to fill with drugs.
I mean, even if you're not even an addict, and someone's like dealing with depression, I'll tell them, go to the mission. You can show up at the Atlanta Mission or any homeless shelter and serve them food and get out of your, like you said, get out of your head, break the pattern that you're in, and go serve in that situation. And you know, you're going to walk out of there with some gratitude.
Right, absolutely. And but the key thing to know is that when you first start doing that and somebody tells you to do that, it's not going to give you instant relief. It's going to feel like a chore.
Right.
But at some point, if you stay at it, it will click and you will have a moment and you'll be like, holy shit, this is good stuff. You know what I mean? And you don't have to be a choir boy, a church, or whatever. You're just doing this stuff,
Yeah.
I used to laugh at like those stickers, perform random acts of senseless kindness and stuff. When I was a kid, we used to be like,
right.
That's exactly what it is. Just doing little stuff like that. In my daily life, when I was still incarcerated, it was like something I was doing. It was on my program. And then you get out. I got out. I'm trying to make up for 11 years of lost time. I'm trying to build a career. I'm going to grad school. I'm running a nonprofit. I'm trying to do all these things, and it's like, it's easy to get caught in the rat race and forget these things. So it is kind of like impromptu. Like this morning, I get a phone call from somebody, and I'm doing this stuff. This is service. This is service. This is not what I wanted to be doing right now. I'm exhausted. I just went through finals at Georgia Tech. I'm totally spent. But this is what it's about. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate you taking the time to share.
Absolutely.
And I think like it's a for those people who think, okay, I can do this on my own, or I'll just another drink, or I'm gonna go back. That that saying you hear. I hate the cliches, but that jails, institutions, and death.
Yeah.
I mean it. It really is. And when you tell somebody in their face, look, you keep doing this, you're gonna get killed, you're gonna kill somebody, or you're gonna lose your family, or these are the consequences.
It's inevitable. I mean, that's just what happens. I've had all of them, so.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing it. And if you're listening to this podcast, you can check out more episodes at themosthighshow.com. And if you need help, there's contact information there. Hit us up. We can connect you to places that can help you and in your journey to getting sober and living life free. All right? That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.